everyone, this is Pause or Repeat. Here we figure out whether a game is really worth your time and money. Today's game is Last Epoch. Last Epoch is a game that finally had its 1.0 release in February and has been gaining a lot of attention from Diablo and Path of Exile fans alike. So let's dive into what the action RPG is all about by first looking at the gameplay. The gameplay of Last Epoch is immediately familiar to those who have played Diablo or Path of Exile. One of the biggest differences is the complexity. Last Epoch stands in between the more casual nature of Diablo and the intense complexity of Path of Exile. There are currently 5 classes to choose from: Mage, Rogue, Primalist, Acolyte, or Sentinel. Between these classes, there are many different abilities that you'll acquire alongside passive upgrades. Each class ability has its own skill tree, with modifiers like, for example, changing Fireball into a flamethrower or splitting into multiple fireballs. As a result, the game has plenty to delve into while you go through the story campaign, as well as grind out gear upgrades and the endgame content. Speaking of the story, let's go over that. The story of Last Epoch can get a little confusing. Time travel is involved in the campaign, taking inspiration from the classic game Chrono Trigger. To get you up to speed without spoiling anything, there were once only 2 entities, Oribus and Eterra. Eterra created the world that humans live in, and even at one point lived among them. In the present day, she is no longer there, but she has left her faction of the Keepers to uphold her values. The gods, separate beings from Oribus and Eterra, exist in this world as well. And the game starts off with the god Raye launching a war against Eterra. Your playable character gets involved with the Keepers, and from there the story unfolds. What will be the fate of Eterra? But now the question still stands. Pause or repeat? Alright, it's time to answer the burning question. Does this game not feel like what Diablo 4 should have been? What are your thoughts, Chris?
Starting off hot like that. Well, let's put it this way. Last Epoch doesn't just enter the ring with, brass knuckles when it came in for the fight against Diablo, and let's say also Path of Exile. It's more like channeling your inner Wolverine, ready to slice through the competition. I think we got a new action RPG to be excited about.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, this game, it has been in the works for a while. The game initially had a release back in 2019, so it's been in early access for quite a while. But what's really nice to see is that now that the 1.0 version has been out and so many people have been praising it, a lot of reasons why they've been praising it is because, well, one, Diablo 4 has really not held its player base very well.
Well,
and
let's hope it is secure with the Xbox Game Pass.
True. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, right.
But secondly,
first Activision Blizzard game, by the way, to be on the Xbox Game Pass. But go on, Henry.
But secondly, this game, when it was in early access, got a lot of feedback, a lot of negative feedback, actually, from the people who were excited about playing this game. And they took all that feedback and said, you know what? You're right. Let's fix this. They actually listened to the people who wanted to play the game, and they fixed pretty much everything. And it's not a perfect game, but especially when you come
what
from
makes the
Diablo
game not
4,
perfect? What makes the game not perfect for you, Henrik?
I'd say its weakest point for sure is the story, because it's not as memorable as a story like Diablo 2. Not to say Diablo 4's story was really memorable either, but
fair, yeah.
Classic line from Diablo 2, stay a while and listen.
No, I
don't
think
really
that's
get anything like that.
No, I think that's a good point, Henrik, because I feel like the story is like a silent extra on a movie.
Yeah.
They're like barely there, but occasionally steal the show with its quirky gestures. But you kind of get completely lost. Like, I know they had the introduction of time travel, which you're revisiting the same regions in different eras, which is like watching a sitcom rerun. You know the plot, but the jokes hit differently every time. So
yeah,
you gotta kind of take it for what
Chrono
you will.
Trigger does the same thing, but
yeah,
I mean, Chrono Trigger was also a game from a bygone era, and the story in Chrono Trigger is its own thing. This is just inspired by it. It's not Chrono Trigger.
Very true. I think, one thing to celebrate about this game, which I definitely feel like it gives a run for its money for the likes of massive franchises like Diablo and Path of Exile. And the reason we're mentioning both of those two franchises is because everybody wants to be at that next level of action RPG, and they should be
Yeah.
celebrated for what they are. And that's what makes games like this come to reality. And I think a lot of action RPGs are going to be following the same steps to this game when it comes to the skill tree, because that can really make or break an RPG experience.
Oh yeah.
And it's almost like the Picasso of customization. It's all about
Yeah.
crafting your character brushstroke by brushstroke, and this game really excels at that. If you really are into
Now,
that ARPG.
there is one thing to differentiate when you talk about the skill trees, though, because, while Diablo's skill trees, not very impactful, it's basically like, oh, you do a little bit more damage here, you do a little bit more crit chance here, whereas the skill trees in this game, it's like, oh, let's actually modify your skills and abilities meaningfully. But then you compare it to, like, Path of Exile skill tree, and if you've never seen that, go look it up, because it's wild. Like, that
Yeah.
skill tree makes you feel like you need to go and get an actual degree in that game to understand it.
Yeah, it's like what
so
people
expansive.
Yeah, it's like what
This one is
people
not like that,
complain.
though.
Yeah, it's like when people complain about, like, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, or, like having to, I got to do this objective to this to be able to get this kind of percolation on top of my gun rig. It just gets so out of control. But yeah, I think this game is definitely worth the purchase. It does feel like a repeat, because you're going to want to test out the different characters that are offered within the game. I am someone that does harper on the fact that I do wish there was a stronger story, but now that there's a bit more support towards this franchise, hopefully the developers take that to note, because I think that was a good majority of some of the negative backlash going. I wanted to be fully immersed in the overall fantasy experience, but that kind of left me when a lot of these characters are not memorable at the end of your end game.
Yeah, and there are going to be future updates as well. It is a live service game after all.
Yeah.
And so it is going to have that benefit
Which
of
those are the
having
things that kind of
updates.
get plagued, right?
Yeah, but I'd say that this is probably going to be one of those live service games that actually sticks around and doesn't try to be manipulative to its player base. I mean, they even said for the DLC updates, expansions, whatever it is that they're going to come out with, they're not going to charge more than what they charge for the base game. There's microtransactions that'll pay for all that,
Right.
otherwise, but like they're not going to charge you another $60. I mean, the game isn't $60, but then they're not going to charge you another $30 for an expansion on top of the game, which that's a win in my book, considering how bad we've seen some of these companies try to get money out of their player base.
Yeah.
Diablo being probably one of the biggest examples, honestly.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's refreshing to see, and honestly,
Well, it's kind of a bummer now that you're mentioning that. I'm like, it's starting to come to my understanding more and more recently that a lot of the RPG have fully embraced the live service route, and you kind of just wish it would just kind of be its own thing. But then again, a lot of money involved, and there's a whole, it's like I was joking with my buddies the other day. We were in an Instagram chat together, and we were talking about, CDs and, and vinyl, and I was being made fun of CD-ROMs, and they're like, dog, you really just said it in its full vernacular? CD-ROM? Who the hell says that? My car doesn't even
like
have
that?
a CD. And he's like, my car doesn't even have a CD. And I'm like, I know, just like how your video game console won't have a CD-ROM soon. It's just amazing how fast, electronics can be just so obsolete within, 3 to 5 years. It's just amazing how fast things are moving.
Absolutely.
But we haven't heard from you though, Henrik. What's going on? What's the verdict?
Yeah, this is a repeat for me as well. I love Diablo 2's style of game, and really this game is a passion project through and through. The story of how this company, 11th Hour Games, came to fruition is wild. So basically, the guy who's the CEO right now for the company, he's a big fan of Diablo 2. And he really, really likes this genre. And then one day he was like, you know what? I'm going to go on Reddit, and I'm going to try and see if I can find anyone who can help me do a passion project. And he made a couple posts, got a few people on board, and he's been, working on this game as the CEO of the company since. And I love to see that. I love to see a fan say, you know what, I think I can do it better, and they are doing it better.
Hey, well, there might be a new hub for that, and we're going to be talking about that later in today's show. Discord offering the opportunity to build upon games in their own platforms. So, hey, you never know. Started off in a Reddit thread, now eventually being turned into something new. Amazing stories like that are super, super cool.
What's the Shia LaBeouf thing? Don't let your dreams be dreams. Do it.
You know what? What an awesome way to end this segment. So true, Shia LaBeouf. Gotta love it.